Welcome back to the Deliberate Leaders Podcast. I am your host and executive business coach, Allison Dunn. Our topic today is empathy in management. Our guest is Eric Girard. He is the CEO of Girard Training Solutions. He is also the author of Lead Like a Pro, the Essential Guide for New Managers. And he's also the host of the Management Development Unlocked podcast. Eric, thank you so much for joining us here today.
It is my pleasure. Thanks, Ellie.
Absolutely. I love to kick these off with a deliberate conversation. What would be your number one leadership tip for our listeners?
So many, so many things I could say. I'm gonna use what our topic today is, which is empathy. I would say that any good leader needs to be an empathetic human. You need to listen well. You need to ask great questions. You need to walk a mile in the other person's shoes, not to become a therapist, not to become a counselor, but just simply to let the other person know that you hear them, that they're valuable, that they're important, and then you can go about solving the problem. So I would say empathy.
Empathy is one of those things that is really hard sometimes to understand. And I think you just did a really good job at describing like how to be empathetic. We do new manager training as well. And so I'm actually really excited about having this conversation with you. When I think about new manager training, one of the things that we talk about is the opportunity when someone is really exceptional at what they do inside of an organization. And because they're so good at that as an individual contributor, they often get asked to step up into leadership. So what are some of the things that you believe new managers need for skills? And that actually, so let me just start there, I guess, with the skills. I have other questions.
I think that the first skill that a manager needs to master is the skill of making that psychological transition from I was an individual responsible for tasks, and I am now a manager responsible for a team and getting results done through a team. So that's the first thing that I would suggest that a manager needs to master. And that means learning how to delegate. That means learning how to let go of stuff, including maybe some stuff that you really like. This happened to me with my own business. I started out as a solopreneur and did everything. I did the website, I did the bookkeeping, I did all the things, and realized that I wasn't doing all of them particularly well. And so one of the first things I had to let go of was the website, which I was enjoying playing with. And so there was a little bit of grieving where I'm like, well, shoot, I kind of like that, but Sandra's actually better and faster at it than I am. So, it works out. So I would say delegation is a huge one, followed by being able to set goals with your team and help them understand, who does what, how much, and by when, and making that very, very clear to everybody on the team that this is what you're responsible for. This is what you're responsible for. This is where I begin and you end, sort of a thing. I love SMART goals. SMART is my favorite method for setting goals. So I use that an awful lot. And I could go on. We could certainly talk, for the rest of an hour about all the skills that I think a manager needs. But I would start with delegating and letting go of those things you really love, and then setting goals so everybody knows who's responsible for what.
How can you tell when someone, or what are some of the setbacks when someone actually can't quite step up as from an individual contributor or someone who is on a team to leading a team? What are some tips that you would have for like just the mindset shift that they need to make from there?
One of the things that I see, when somebody hasn't stepped up is when they keep defaulting to, going back to what they're really good at. So I'm a great engineer. That's why I was hired. That's why I had my old job. That's why I got promoted, because I'm a great engineer, or I'm a great financial analyst, or fill in the blank. So I'm just going to go do that and just keep doing that. And that's the behavior that I keep seeing, is that folks fall back on what they were good at because that's where they get their validation. And I did the same thing. My first management job out of the gate, I kept falling back into my individual contributor tasks, and I didn't pay enough attention to my team, and we all paid dearly for that. So that was a learning for me as well.
So, your topic today is about empathy. Why is empathy such an important skill for especially new managers?
Well, it really comes down to, if you want to get results through people, you have to really relate to your team. You have to be able to really sit in their seat for a while and understand things from their perspective. One of my favorite assessments is called DISC, the DISC assessment. And DISC is an acronym. Yep, you love that. So, dominance, influence, steadiness, and conscientiousness are the four DISC quadrants that you can learn through this assessment. And it helps you understand yourself and your own preferences for approaching work situations. And then you also get the tools to speed read other people. The purpose of that is not to make other people have a magic decoder ring to understand you. It's you making the adjustment to meet them where they're at. And so that to me is a form of empathy, where you adjust and you adapt to make things easier to facilitate communication with somebody else. And I think that if you can do that as a manager, you're going to get better results through your team, because they're going to feel like, A, this person gets me. They actually listen to me, and it's easy. It's easy for me to talk to Eric. It's easy for me to talk to Allie, because I don't have to work so hard. And that's because we're doing the adjusting, we're doing the shifting to make it easier for our teams. So those are just a couple of thoughts that come to mind.
Yeah, I DISC is also my preferred assessment type of platform, and it's really a powerful tool. And the way I say is that it's to be used for the power of good and not evil. So once I understand myself, then I can identify who I'm talking to and make adjustments so that you can speak to them the way they want to be communicated.
Mhm, mhm.
So, I love that. What other skills do new managers need?
Well, we've already talked about delegating and goal setting. I think a really important duo of skills, a power duo, if you will, is coaching and feedback.
Mhm.
So, being an excellent coach using something as simple as the GROW model, which stands for grow, goals, reality, options, and way forward. It's a super simple way to facilitate a coaching conversation. And then feedback. I use the SBI model, which is situation, behavior, and impact. And those two simple little models can help you learn so much about your employees and what motivates them, what's important to them, get their ideas on why a problem happened and how to avoid it to happening again in the future. So, coaching and feedback go hand in hand, and they're super important. And one book that I always recommend when we get to that point in the show is, I talk about Michael Bungay Stanier and his book, The Coaching Habit. Absolutely love that book and his 7 questions that you can feed in very easily into the GROW model. Um, just think that asking good questions, good open-ended, curious questions, is so important to being a good coach.
You have a specific model that you follow when training new managers on how to properly delegate and like how to hold people accountable to what they've delegated to them.
Yeah, I don't use a particular model for delegation per se.
Mhm.
What I do have people do is think a little bit about, am I doing the right things right now? So there's a famous saying, are we doing things right, or are we doing the right things? And so I get people thinking about that, and, listing out what they're doing, and is this stuff that I really need to be hanging on to, or can I delegate that? Can I hand it off? Can I train somebody else to do it? I do love Crucial Conversations. I think that that is a fabulous book and a fantastic course. And being able to use Crucial Conversations to have a conversation about, hey, I expected this, I'm getting this. Why is that gap there, and what can we do together to close that gap? I think that the tools taught in Crucial Conversations can really help two people come together to close a gap, to close a performance gap, in a way that's not shaming, in a way that's not blaming, but does actually get good results.
Thank you. Do similar idea in the sense of like the delegation or delegating to a new team. You may have been on the team before, you get elevated up. What are some of the ways that you would help a new manager make that mindset shift of um, stepping away from doing and leading the team to do the work.
Yeah. You know, it kind of comes down to you have to do some inner work first. So you have to you have to put on that new job. So you got to take off your old coat, which was the doer, you know, and put on the new coat, which is the leader, and spending some time thinking about, okay, I'm leading this team and I'm not part of the gang anymore. And this can be especially difficult if you have got team members who are friends and now you've been elevated above. And let's say you work on a team, like, for example, I worked on a team of 3 and I was elevated to lead the other 2. And I had to have some pretty frank conversations with folks saying, okay, it's not business as usual anymore. I'm still Eric. I'm still the same guy, but you know, like we can't go out and go to happy hour together anymore, really. Um, I'm not part of the gang, as a friend of mine put it. And that's one of the hardest things to do is to have that conversation inside your head first that says, okay, things are a little different. Not that you suddenly become, you know, suddenly you're walking around in a suit and a tie and you're very stiff and formal. It's not like that. But you do have to kind of realize, okay, things are a little bit different, and accountability becomes a big part of your job and holding people accountable to results. But you can do that in a way that's not frightening or intimidating by just setting goals together, and having a collaborative process that says, okay, what are you going to accomplish this quarter or this month? What are you going to accomplish and how are we going to keep track of that? And then just being consistent in holding folks accountable, saying, hey, you know, we're here. I'd like to see you here. So let's move up a notch. And what are your ideas for doing that?
I think you're highlighting also kind of an interesting point, because sometimes as we grow in our careers and we get elevated to the opportunity of management, which means we're leading, we have to almost step out a little bit out of a social group. So how do we encourage new managers to recognize that expanding their network and building relationships of similar um, peer groups? Like, what are your thoughts on how to do that effectively and why it isn't so important?
Well, one of the things I do in my training courses is, you know, I'll bring together a group of, usually it's mixed. Usually there are new managers in the same room with people who have been managing for 10 years and just never received training. But, you know, I'll get a group of, say, 30 people together. And what I will do as a facilitator is deliberately mix people up over and over again in different activities to relieve boredom, first off, but also to get people used to talking to a lot of different people in a short period of time. And I'll make the point at some point that, hey, I'm mixing you up on purpose to help you build your network. So we do that inside of a facilitated classroom experience to give folks the chance to learn how to do it. And then I'll make the point, okay, from now on, everywhere you go inside the company, go talk to somebody you don't know, and you know, just strike up a conversation, because you never know who you can help first off, and then maybe somebody can help you in return. So having that mindset of wanting to be of service and helping other people is going to go a long way inside of any organization.
Nick. So far in the interview, you've recommended 2 books, Crucial Conversations and The Coaching Conversation. Was that the other one?
The coaching habit.
The Coaching Habit. Do you have a third top pick for anyone who's listening who is maybe currently an individual contributor and is looking at aiming at a leadership management role? What else should they be reading?
Can I be selfish here? Can I do
Oh,
a
go
plug?
for it.
I would suggest Lead Like a Pro, my book. So Lead Like a Pro, the essential guide for new managers, is a very heavily research-based book. I went to all the top authors I could find to write this one, and then baked in some timeless classic truths that work no matter what. So, and you know, the bibliography of Lead Like a Pro is a big, fat, thick section. So if you want to dive deep into anything that I talk about in the book, it's there. But yeah, in Lead Like a Pro, I break it down into 9 basic areas that folks ought to be focused on, and most of which we've already talked about. Um, Where I end the book is with a short section on recognizing and rewarding your team in a way that doesn't break the bank, and then managing change, which is very important these days because change is nonstop.
Oh, I love that. Okay, so ending it, and those are all segments that I are near and dear to my heart. Of your nine, I think you used the word principles,
Mhm.
correct?
Sure.
Which one is your favorite?
I like them all,
Okay.
obviously, but I would have to say that the first and longest chapter is my favorite, and that's the chapter on empathy.
On empathy. Okay. I think in the kind of the preamble of things, I use the wording that empathy is not a squishy skill.
Yeah.
Can you just expand on that for me?
Well, even a few years ago, if you asked a manager to develop empathy skills, they would probably look at you a little sideways, like, why do I need to be empathetic to my team? I just need them to perform. And I'm gonna do what it takes to get my team to perform. Well, research shows and experience shows that if you are more empathetic toward your team members, whether you're leading that team or whether you're part of that team, if you show a little genuine emotion and a little genuine humanity, people are going to be more willing to work hard for you. And back in the day, it used to be empathy is something we can put aside. That's too squishy. That's too woo woo. I don't go woo woo in the book at all, but I do spend some time thinking about, okay, well, there's science to this. And Daniel Goleman in his book, Emotional Intelligence, really goes deep on the three different types of empathy and how that can really help build a team and build a unit in order to get a lot done.
Awesome. I'm asking this, and I'm not really sure where I'm actually taking it, but is everyone able to be trained with the skills to manage well?
I thought you were going to go down the path of can everybody become empathetic? Uh,
I
so
was
I
trying to
was
bring it up to a higher level.
so I'm going to answer my question and then I'm going to answer your question. So the
Okay.
first is it was very interesting. I was in a class where I was talking about empathy and somebody raised their hand and said, I'm autistic.
Yeah.
Empathy is very, very difficult for me. And so, what I'm not suggesting is that anybody try seek out a personality transplant or try to become something they're not. But there are empathy like skills you can display to encourage folks to come to you with their problems, to want to brainstorm and problem solve with you. That doesn't require a huge shift in your personality. So that's the first thing I would suggest is I think everybody can at least display some empathy like skills, and that will help. It will absolutely help. Now, to your question, which is, can everybody be taught how to be a good manager? I think so. I think you can. I think it takes work. I don't think that anybody's going to wave a magic wand and poof, you're done. And that's why in my courses, there's tons of activity in the course. And then at the end, I always ask participants to pair up with one or two other people and make a coffee date to meet within a week to talk about what they learned and kind of create that habit of talking with somebody else because the forgetting curve is a real thing. And if you don't talk about and apply what you've learned soon after the learning experience, it just goes away. So I think you can learn it, and I think it takes work. I think you do need to partner up with folks and think about, okay, well, in my situation, in my company, in my team, how can I apply what I learned? How can I apply these 9 principles in a way that's going to help the team grow and move forward?
Is there any one obvious skill that indicates that someone will be a good leader?
No, I don't think so. It's not like, I can look at somebody and say, "Oh, they're a D in disc and therefore they'll be a good leader." That's
Mhm.
not true.
Mhm.
And that's not what disc is for anyway.
Agreed.
Um, just because somebody is naturally empathetic does not mean they'll be a good leader. It means they're empathetic. That's what it means. But I think it's a collection of skills and attributes that can be built over time. You can learn these things in order to be a better manager.
Eric, I super appreciate our time together. What is the best way for folks to follow you and or get your book?
Yeah. So if you find me on LinkedIn, I'm Eric P. Girard on LinkedIn. That's probably the easiest way to find me. You can also send me an email at eric@girardtrainingsolutions.com. And my book is available as a paperback, a Kindle book, and an Audible book on Amazon.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining us here today.
Thank you very much. It was my pleasure.